All right, we're back.
Okay.
All right, we're back, man. We told you guys we're gonna be consistent, and so here we are. This is the first official episode back since our long hiatus. What do you want to talk about today?
I think we can talk about. Oh, hey, my heart is like. Ugh. Okay. About how this last year went for us and what changed, right? We were saying how I changed. Well, my perspective changed. But I think all in all, like, I changed. So that's what we're going to talk about. Just, I think, me surrendering me rather than holding you to the expectation of surrender. Yeah.
So, if we could paint a picture for the people, I would love to hear from you. Where were we a year ago? What did our relationship look like? And where were we? That way they understand
Yeah, for sure.
what we went through in the year or what has
Okay.
changed or how we ended up here. First, let's just let them know, like, where were we last year? Where were you? How did you feel about
Yeah,
our relationship
for
last
sure.
year?
Okay. Holy Spirit, help me. I'm going to be looking at my phone because I don't want to miss details. We have always been good, quote unquote good. And we have a solid friendship. And I think it's solidified our foundation. But I do believe that when it came to marriage, obviously we were thrown into it. And maybe I've never had any examples of what marriage should look like. You, thank God, have both of your parents that are married, and that's been your example, right? But I think we all have an expectation of what marriage should look like in our head, and as a woman, as a girl, my expectation is to be loved, to be taken care of, to be like everything, give me everything. And I don't need things, but I need time, and I need affection, and I need just for you to like encourage me. Yeah. So I feel like that was my expectation of you. And yes, in a way, there was a lot of like, quote unquote, holy pride of like, God, I am a godly woman. Why is he not seeing it? And I feel like I was requiring so much of you to love me and so much of you to like validate me. It's always hard because I feel like times I've tried to talk to somebody, they're like, oh honey, like we're just gonna keep praying. And I'm like, yes guys, but like what else? And yes, prayer works, but I feel like obviously we also have to move in the practical. And so long story short, I feel like perhaps there was a bit of like resentment, and I can't, like, resentment is the word for lack of better words. I think there was just more like brokenness from myself. And we have a leader, he has his leader, and he kept texting us and he kept checking in on us, and he's like, guys, like, I don't know why the Lord's putting you in my heart, but I'm praying for you. And like, he would text us like twice a week, maybe for like a month. I remember the last text we got, I think had to be in like September, where he was like, Norberto Monse, what is the breakthrough that needs to happen, you guys? I don't know why Holy Spirit keeps putting you guys in my heart. And I remember reading the text and being like, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out what the breakthrough is also. And that's it. I literally couldn't even text him back because I didn't know what it was. And I was also asking the Lord, hey Lord, like, what's happening here? Why am I so angry? Why am I so unsatisfied? And first things first, perhaps I wasn't like feeding my spirit so often with the Lord. But I kept asking the Lord and I kept praying. And honestly, this is where community matters so much and who you hang out with matters so much. But I remember this was September. Norby was leaving for like a week travel, and we were good. And I was dropping him off at the airport, and I was like, as long as we don't argue or I don't try to get into a deep conversation before he leaves, we're going to be good. Because I feel like I always wanted to talk. And it was always like, wait, hold on, not right now. So it was like, this is not the good time to talk. He has to leave, whatever. I don't know why we're getting off. We get off the freeway and it gets deep and we pull up to the airport and I'm like weeping, like
It didn't get deep until
literally we pulled up.
If you know LAX, we pulled in to the big roundabout situation and we pull into the airport, right? And then she started a deep conversation and I'm like, we're like
Literally
5 minutes away from me getting out of the car. We don't have the time for a deep conversation, so I already have a feeling about how this is going to end. But the truth is, one of the things that has caused issues in our marriage at times is me being very busy and me working a lot. And my work at times gets very slow. And then in those moments, I find that I can spend a lot of time with my family. I can hang out more. And then my business will get very busy at times. And it'll get busy for a month, 2 months, 3 months straight.
Yeah, for sure.
I have been very bad at making time.
Yeah.
And that has caused issues in our relationship. And I'm trying to do better about that. And I know I'm far from perfect still. I know it. But leading up to that airport moment, it was a busy season.
Yeah.
And I was very busy. And last year was tough.
Yeah.
It was hard financially. And so, it was the first time that I felt a little more strain on my business, rather than the years prior. I was just thriving and everything was on the up and up. And then last year took a dip. And I felt that. We felt that. Yeah. And so I felt... Again, I have to say yes to all the work that's coming in. And I was knee deep in this busy schedule. And sometimes our communication isn't the best in those times. And I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, absolutely. It was that because I'm just like, I'm a simple girl. All I need is like 10 minutes. And yeah, I felt like I wasn't being prioritized.
And that was building up inside of you.
Yeah.
And I knew it too. I was like, all right, we're reaching that threshold where she's like
running out of patience. Yeah.
She needs love. She needs time. And nothing else will fix it other than that. And then I had a 9-day trip.
Yeah. Planned. Also, like, the kids were being really rough.
Yeah.
So it was
that doesn't help.
All that frustration of just, I'm at home, you're going to be gone. And you know what? I've learned this, and we will talk about it more right now, that in my mind, when Norby travels, it's like, well, you're going on a vacation. You're going to Colombia, on a vacation to Colombia, and you're going to be doing all these fun things. And that's like the furthest thing from the truth. Yes, he does go out and he has coffee and all these things, but it's part of his work because he's following people around to film them and makes sure he gets everything for their video to make their video look top notch from detail to detail, And so I was, in a sense, having like that resentment. So leading up to, we were getting to the airport and I'm like bawling my eyes out. I'm like, bruh, you need to leave. You're about to miss your flight. I think he was late to it. Thank God, like, he didn't miss it, but he was later than usual to it. And the whole ride home, it's like an hour. It's 11 p.m. And I'm like weeping and I'm crying and I'm telling the Lord, like, am I wrong? Am I wrong for feeling this way? I'm so frustrated, and just surrendering it to the Lord, crying it out to the Lord. It's the best thing I know how to do. And when I'm pulling out of the freeway, the Lord is highlighting like my first leader that I ever had. And I'm like, I'm going to call her. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to call her. I already prayed about it. I already talked to the Lord about it. I don't need to call her. And I was like, okay, I'm going to text her. If she replies back, it's from the Lord. And I'm like, hey, are you up? She's like, yeah, what's up? And I'm like, can I call you? She's like, yeah. And I call her and I'm like crying. I thought I was already done crying, weeping, and I wasn't. But the thing that I learned was that I just needed to be heard. And I think, honestly, if I'm honest, with her was the very first time I have ever experienced somebody being empathetic towards me, being a wife. She was like, I get it. She's like, you're correct. You're absolutely right to need your husband's time. You're absolutely right that you're upset that he's not setting this time and he's not prioritizing you. And that just, it felt like I just needed that hug. Even though she didn't hug me, it was through the phone. But it was like, you're not mad at me? You're not mad at me for saying, hey, husband, pay attention to me? And there was ultimatums. She was like, you need to give him ultimatums, la la la. And it was so funny because I didn't have the courage to tell her, I think till like December, and this was in October or September. And I was like, I'm so sorry. All of your ideas were amazing, but I didn't listen to you. And she just looked at me and I started laughing. And she's like, sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you. And I really needed that. Like, she was a friend to me because I felt like I was drowning by myself. And I felt like, well, he's my best friend, but I can't tell him, yo, shake it off, you know? I tried, but it wasn't working. And I feel like the boiling point was that cry to LAX and then the phone call with my leader. And then for that whole month, the Lord was just like highlighting things to me. Remember, I said, hey, Lord, what's the breakthrough that needs to happen? And I thought it was him. And it wasn't. It was me, and it was my surrender. And like, honestly, my husband is such an incredible laid down lover. Like, I have always said that to you. I've always said to you that you look more like Jesus than you know, because you're so patient and you're so loving and you're so loyal. And I just have always admired that about you. And that's what made me fall in love with you, just how patient you are with me. Because I am like fire and you are like ice. Like, you're just cool. Like, okay, chill out, you know? And so we had that moment, and then we have leadership meetings at our church, and we're reading this book called Emotionally Healthy Leader. And so this chapter was about meeting the elephant in the room, right? And it was talking about in leadership, how do you deal with someone who's messing up and you already spoke to them. It gave you like a guideline. You speak to them, you meet them with love, and you say, hey, I noticed that this, do you want to talk about it? What's going on? And so we're in this huge meeting, and they're like, does anyone have questions? And me and my girls were over here giggly, right? Because we're like, hey, I don't encounter these problems with my girls, my friendship group. I encounter these in marriage, like, and we're all giggly because we're like, yeah, like with my husband, it's so hard. And it was just so funny to me that we were all like, I can talk to my girls, my disciples, but I can't talk to my husband because he just doesn't seem to get it, right? And we were giggling about it, like, haha, that's so funny. We all struggle with the same thing. And so they asked a question, and I'm like, should I ask? Like, we said, Pastor, what do we do? And we've already tried all of this, and the person still doesn't change. And I did. And we were all cracking up, and they jokingly said, and why is it your husband? And we were all like cracking up. And I was like, no, it's not, you know. But in my mind, I was like, I've literally done everything and he's not changing. And this one line changed my perspective, and it checked me, where Angel said this. He said, are you meeting him in love? And are you meeting them in love? And that was like bucket of cold water, because I'm like, I'm not, you know. And my one prayer always is, Lord, like, teach me to love. Teach me to love. And it broke my heart, because I'm like, man, like, the one person whose life I want to impact is my husband's and my children. I always say, if people saw me and they're like, oh, she's amazing, that's fine. But for me, the most important is that my husband and my children would say that. To say that my mom or my wife, she is love. And I was checked in that moment, because I'm like, I'm not. He said there's one thing to speak out of frustration and expectation, and it's another thing to meet them from the place of love. And that just changed everything for me. And after the meeting, I spoke to my brother, and I don't even remember the words that were exchanged, but he said to me, like, you're not always kind to Norby. I said, what do you mean? And he's like, no, like, I see, he said, he is so kind and he's so patient with you, but I see how you treat him and you don't speak kindly to him. And I was like, what? I'm like, how come you never said that to me? And he said, because he said, in those moments when you're upset, nobody can say anything to you. And that hurt me because I'm like, what? Like, when did I become that person that was the Monse before God? You know, that shouldn't be Monse now. So that really stuck with me. And even that night on the ride home, I shared with my mom, and my mom said the same thing. She's like, yeah, we don't feel like it's an open place for them to give me like that feedback. And I was like, whoa, like, that's a problem within me. And I feel like that was the breakthrough, right? For me, I know that was the breakthrough.
I didn't even know that your brother and your mom told you that. You never told me that.
I did.
No? You never told me that.
They did.
That's crazy.
They did. And I was like, oh my gosh, Monse, you are the problem. And that was obviously not fun to find out, right? Because I think that I try to constantly, like, I'm constantly praying and asking the Lord, like, Lord, like, feed my spirit. If something about me doesn't serve you and it doesn't glorify you, take it away and like show me and deal with me. Yeah. So that's what that was my shift for me. And it brought me so much freedom because honestly, personally speaking, last year, I mean, I sometimes often battle with like depression, you know, and not falling for like the lies of the enemy, that I'm not enough, that I'm not doing enough, because as a stay-at-home mom, it's so easy to fall into that and to see that my friends have careers and they're making money and whatever, and I'm not, you know. I'm like, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom that homeschools and like serves, and that's it. You know. So anyway, I felt like there was a stronghold in a sense of that, and really it was like my anger and my bitterness of my expectation from him, where if I look to you to feed my mind and my spirit and make me feel loved, man, I'm gonna fail, like, and I'm gonna be depressed and I'm gonna be angry and I'm gonna be bitter because you are not God, and only the Lord can feed that part about me. And so that was my breakthrough moment, where it was like, whoa, Monse, it's you. And then, you know, we were going to Arizona for a work trip.
I mean, that's a lot to unpack. I mean, that's crazy to hear that your brother and your mom told you that, because, I mean, that's the way that I felt for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I ever would try to tell you something before, it was like, you know, you felt attacked. You felt like you had to defend yourself. And then if I try to tell you that, yo, if I try to tell you, like, you don't have to defend yourself, it was like, that was a whole nother thing. And it was just, so it was hard. Also, what I'll add to everything that you said is my perspective as a man, and the only reason I bring this up is because I know a lot of men go through this. Men are working hard.
Yeah.
And they're providing for their families, and we have stresses on our mind of like, how can I make more money? How can I be able to give my wife everything she wants? How can I be able to provide for my kids? How can I be able to cover our costs, our needs? Yeah. We have these dreams as a family. How can I accomplish these dreams of buying a home or whatever it is, right? And we have these constant stresses on our mind. For me, it was a very hard thing to also to be thinking about that all day and have that pressure all day and be like, dang, man, I gotta crack the code. Like, and especially last year, it was tough, you know? So I was just like, dang, man, like, I'm not figuring it out. It's not hitting. Like, it was hard. And then coming home to the stress of my wife asking for more and having these super high expectations, like, that was hard, you know? And I didn't know how to put that in words. I didn't know if that pressure that I felt was right or wrong. I was like, am I wrong for thinking that this is a lot? And I didn't know. and but it was a lot, and those were some of my toughest moments. And
Yeah,
I
for
told
sure.
you that at one point, when we spoke and we were having a real talk. And I
Yeah.
think I've only mentioned that to you one time, but like those were some of my most stressful
Yeah,
moments that it got the hardest for me, where
for
it's
sure.
like when I'm being pressured by my wife and when I already have all these other stresses, and I was just like, dang,
Right.
like that was a moment where I felt like I was up against the wall, and I was like, you almost feel like you want to quit.
And that was, again, honestly, as I hear you speak, I see this like that was honestly only the work of the Holy Spirit to be able to say, hey, Monse, you're not loving him well. For me to receive it was only the work of the Spirit. It felt like literally a blindfold was removed from my eyes and I could see you with compassion again. Because I remember just thinking and repenting and saying sorry, like, I'm supposed to be your safe space. Your house is supposed to be your safe space. And it wasn't, and there was the phone call that he had, a work phone call, a work meeting, and we were literally on our way to Arizona, and it was supposed to be fun and exciting, and it was.
Amidst my super busy schedule, I had this trip to Arizona planned for work, and we ended up turning it into like a family trip and said, dude, let's drive over there. And typically I'd fly there, do my job, come back. But then I had another busy week after that, and then I had a 9-day trip planned after that too, so it was going to be a lot. And we decided, let's go as a family. Let's do this road trip, and it's going to be fun. And I have to work at the end of the day, but it's going to be fun, and we're going to be able to hang out as a family and get some time in. The day that we're driving and heading to Arizona, I had a phone call with a client. It was a phone call where, the client was pretty angry about some stuff, stressed about some stuff. And that day there was a lot of pressure applied to me on that phone call, as if, I was at fault for whatever was going on. And it was a pretty heavy phone call, and I was in it. I was in the phone call, and my wife and my kids are sitting in the car right next to me, and they're hearing everything. And I was knee deep in that phone call, but I guess, you had your experience in watching that play out too.
Yeah. And I really want to mention that last year in May, I was asking the Lord to teach me to pray for my husband and to teach me to see him how the Lord sees him and to love him how the Lord loves him. Because I was like, okay, Lord, something's not budging, And I didn't want to I didn't want to have expectations of you that came from me, And so I read this book called The Meaning of Marriage, and it just talks about that, like, what is the meaning of marriage? It says to constantly remind your spouse who they are in the Lord, who God made them to be. And I wasn't doing that. And honestly, I think it's something I still have to practice, and I will forever have to practice in my marriage. But just as we're speaking, I was reminded of that, to love Norby for who God made Norby to be. And so when that phone call happened, I remember I was like, even my kids, we were like upset, like, why is this person speaking to him like this? Like, who do they think that they are? Obviously, he's our person. And so we felt really upset. But that's when I felt the most regretful of, like, man, I'm so sorry that I have not been your safe space. Hearing that phone call put things into perspective for me, that he deals with clients all day long, and it can be little things that are so annoying. And honestly, unless you've ever edited a video before, it's a lot of work. You film like 8 hours, and from those 8 hours, you need to look literally like second by second to see, I'm plugging this. And we used to be like, oh my gosh, like, your work is so easy. It's not. You have to go through so much footage, so much content, choose a song. Oh my gosh, it's so much work. 8 hours of footage for like 30 seconds of an Instagram reel that you guys will see, And so I just felt like angry that somebody would speak to you like that. But more than anything, I was like, man, we have to be your safe space. That I want to be in a wife that when you walk in through that door, you're like, thank you, Jesus, that I have this, that we're covering you, your mind, your spirit, your heart. You know what I mean? And that was just like, like knocked me to my chin. And I'm like, dang, like he takes all these jabs at work all day long so graciously, because you never walk into the house like stressed or anything like that. And then you come home and I'm like telling you all the reasons how you're not meeting my expectations. And the Lord checked me there. And that really was my breakthrough moment to surrender. But I want you guys to take note that it was not a thing that happened like this. I had been praying for you since May, or probably even March. But in May, I remember the Lord just speaking some things to me. The Lord said, more than pray, he said, contend for him. The Lord said, are you willing to contend for Norby's life? And to contend means to literally war, to wage war against, like literally fight for his life. And it's like saying like, Satan, you have no authority over my house. You have no authority over my marriage. You have no authority over my children. Absolutely nothing, zero. From the prayer of like, teach me to love him, teach me to pray for him. And the Lord is speaking, and it's the breakthrough that didn't need to happen in Norby's life. It needed to happen within me. And when I changed, then everything in us changed. So many times we want to blame our spouse because it's so easy to put the blame on someone else rather than take the responsibility and pick up your broken pieces and say, hey, Lord, I'm really messing up. And so
ever since that happened, like, it's crazy. Like that was the moment everything changed.
Yeah.
Because after that, I haven't felt that pressure.
We've been good. Yeah, we've been like solid.
I haven't felt that pressure. I haven't felt those days, I'm telling you, when you would put some pressure on me and it felt like an impossible thing to meet. I was just like, I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to be able to do all of this. I'm like, and I'm trying to be a good man. I'm trying to be a good father. I'm trying to be a good husband. And I'm like, but this ain't enough. Obviously now, like, I'm happy because I feel like we have an understanding. Yeah. And if it gets hard, I feel like, one, we're more aligned on our goals. We're more aligned on what we want. It feels like we're walking together now rather like than equally yoked. Literally, it feels like we're walking equally yoked, and we're not. It's not like you do your thing, I do my thing, and let's try to, you know, that's what was happening before. Yes. And honestly, that set us back a lot of years, I think, on certain goals that we have and certain things that we want for ourselves. Like, not choosing to try to be independent in this thing that we're doing together, I think set us back a lot. Yeah. And now that, ever since that Arizona trip, that's where everything kind of changed.
Just how I was going through my little episode of like resentment and frustration, of not feeling like validated. It was like, I wasn't validating you either. I feel like that as women, we lack empathy in that area a lot because we don't know what work looks like for them. And I wonder how things would change if, instead of like having the expectation of being served, how would things change if you switched the lens and you decided to serve instead? Because that changes the whole narrative for your home, for your motherhood, for your marriage, even for yourself. Like the Bible literally says that the one to serve will be the first in the kingdom of God. It's not the one who is served. It's the one that is serving. You know, and I feel like we forget that because we live in a culture of applause and likes and this and that, and you're good enough, and, you know, but what if we just decided to serve? What would that look like? You know, I promise that there would be such an incredible shift in your family if just the shift changed.
That change that happened for us, I mean, that's the reason why we're here today and why we're filming today. I feel like everything came full circle, and in that hiatus, all this work happened, and it really happened in that second half of the year.
But the first half was like tapping in, like from the place of prayer of, hey Lord, I feel like this is crazy. What is going on?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it was, yes, the breakthrough happened, but the first half of the year I was pressing in and I was asking the Lord. So it didn't just poof randomly happen, you know?
Because when she was telling me, listen, I don't want to do the content right now, like, that's why we stopped. She was like, I don't want to do the content. She said, you and I are not good. And I was like, what? Like, how are we not good? Like, I know we're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. I'm like, let's share our story. We'll never be perfect. But she was like, you and I need to be in a good place if we're going to do this thing. And honestly, it took some time for me to understand, but I was like, you were right. At the end of the day, we weren't there. You know what I'm saying? And it's, I think we're there now. Like, we're at least, we're moving in that direction. We're good now. Yeah. And we're only going to get better. And
for sure.
I mean, listen, I'm thankful as a husband. I'm super thankful that this switch has happened, because I just feel like I can operate in my space and do what I need to do. I feel like you're doing your thing, and we're doing this together now.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to say, when we were like not okay, I mean, guys, I don't want you to paint the picture of like we were not good. No, we were good. And that was my problem, because I needed to be deep and I needed to be real. And I don't like, just don't sprinkle me with no BS. Tell me this is not working and tell me why. Instead of being like, oh, like this can work, but, you know, and you know, I'm very much like that. And so it's not that we weren't good. I just felt like we were artificially good. And I was not okay with that. And to me, I was like, do you not see that we're not okay? Like, our foundation is not okay. And this is why I had told him, I can't do the podcast until you and I are good, which means until you and I are like equally yoked. And the Bible talks about that, because if you're not equally yoked, it's hard. You're literally dragging another person, or they're dragging you. We were not equally yoked in the sense of like, I could not comprehend his ambition and his goals because my mind wasn't there. My mind was just like non-mindset of like, oh, let's just seek God and serve and give all our money. Like, and Norby's like, yes, but we also need to do all of these things. And I was like, but why? The Lord will provide. And yes, he will. But the Lord also offers us resources, practical resources, you know? And so we have learned to dream together. We are dreaming about a home, and we are talking about our goals, and we are sitting down to have meetings and to say, hey, this is our budget. This is what it looks like. This is how much we have in credit cards. This is what we need to pay off in order for us to get a house.
And we weren't doing that before. And
we weren't.
We spoke about it so many times. We had the meeting, and then we never stuck to anything. And now we're at least moving in that direction. Intentionally, and we're having meetings more often where we talk about our budget and our plans, and hey, we have to, you know, we can't eat out all the time, right. and so this is the beginning of, I think, the best years of our lives to come.
There has been an amazing shift, right? And so obviously we don't just want to be here like, hey guys, look at our highlight. No, because this was not a highlight, but we are doing better. I think even like we were having a little bit more date nights, which seems really hard with the kids, but we were doing more of that. And, you know, I feel like one thing has helped a lot. It's that we are getting out also and like conviviendo with friends.
Yeah.
The same friends. Not like, oh, I'm going to go out with my friends and then he's going to go out with his friends. No. Like, I feel like that has also helped us because it obviously says, hey, we are a unit. Mm-hmm. And we are one, you know? So I just feel like little changes, practical changes have helped us a lot in our marriage, where we're like, I feel like we hide nothing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it has just solidified us and our communication. And I don't know, I just wanted to share that.
I would say I have a question for you.
Yeah.
What do you tell a woman who doesn't want to let go of control? A woman who has a high expectation of her husband and still sees him as the problem,
Right.
and does not see how she's a problem in any
Sheesh.
way.
Yeah.
What do you? Because that's the case with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know most men are dealing with the same thing I was dealing with, which was
Right.
it's just
And most
constant
women
pressure.
are dealing with what I was dealing with.
Yeah,
You
facts.
know?
Men
And
that,
so, and guys, this
yeah.
is marriage. And so, what would I say to a woman that's dealing with not surrendering the control? It's going to be hard and it's going to be painful if you're holding an expectation that's not even being spoken, first off. And it's going to take humility and it's going to take surrender. And more than, and what does that mean? To humility from what? Like, humility to say, hey, I'm sorry that I have messed up. Hey, I'm sorry that I haven't given you your place as a husband. I'm sorry, because this happens to us women so much, especially if you were raised with a single woman. You want to take the control. That when things are failing, you want to make it right. And unfortunately, men sometimes are not mature enough to even put their foot down and say, hey, like, I'm the head of the household. And, you know, I do want to say how the Bible talks about being a submissive wife, but the Bible does say being a submissive wife to a godly man. And it's a hard question to answer, because I think that for me, it took God obviously showing me, hey, you're messing up. And that takes humility. You know, I thank God that he was probably already shifting my heart since May, that I was praying for me to receive what my mom and my brother said. Because if my heart was in a place of pride, I would have gotten mad at them. And I would have been like, oh, you're siding with him? And that's absolutely not the case. You know, but with control, there's always like pride. When we're wanting to take all the control, there's always pride with that. And so it takes humility and surrender, you know. And oh man, if that's you, I pray that this story helps you. And even for men, I'm sorry, because I know that as women we can be really hard, and we're not giving you your space and your place as the head of the home. But also, in a lot of in a lot of ways, men also need to mature and realize you are the head of that home and you do need to make ends meet. And I know that that's hard.
And more than that, at the end of the day, when she was applying pressure on me, there was a thing that at the end of the day, my thought was always, she's not wrong.
Yeah.
And as men, not only do you have to provide, you still have to be a father to your kids, a leader for your kids. You still have to be a husband to your wife. That means you have to love her. You have to make time to pour onto her. And I could sit here and tell you I've sucked at being all of those at a time. And then I've worked to try to be the best that I can be. And it's a lot of weight to carry, but we have to strive to be all of those things. So you can't sit there and say, I provide and that's enough. Right. No, it's not enough. Not. You never, that is not enough.
No.
You're not going to have a happy home. And you may momentarily, but that's not going to fill your wife's cup. That's not going to fill your son's cup. If you had a dad who only worked and didn't give you anything, didn't give you time, didn't give you leadership, you know what I mean. You went through it yourself. And it's up to us to change that cycle and to pour onto our kids and build our relationship with our kids and have communication with them and to have healthy relationships with our wives. So, yeah, the pressure is on for us as men at the end of the day, and the pressure's on wives as well.
For sure.
wives and mothers. And it's a weight that we got to carry, and it's something that we signed up for. We're all adults, and we chose to have kids, and now we have to step up to the plate and just do this job well.
Yeah.
So,
but I feel like a few practicals are to be in communication with your spouse, because
100%.
even as as he's speaking, I remember how he said, like, we were not on the same page, in the sense of, when he was like busy, I mentally and emotionally isolated myself.
And I did the same too.
And he would do the same, because he was like, I need to tune her out because I have these deadlines to meet.
I was like, you want to hang out? That's cool and all, but I've got pressure with my work.
Right.
And it was just, we were both doing the same thing.
But it was not that he was like, oh, you want to hang out too, but I can't. It was like, I wasn't giving him the respect, because when he was busy, I knew in my mind, mentally, girl, you need to check out before. Like, it was like, put up your wall, Monse, because if you don't, you're going to get hurt. Put up your wall, because if you don't, you're going to be, let down. And I would literally tell him, like, oh, you're busy, peace out. Like, I'm going to go do my own thing with my kids. And that was so wrong. That's the number one thing the enemy wants to do. Attack your marriage so you're not good. Because if you and your husband are not good, guess what? Your kids are not going to be good. Your home is not going to be good. And so what has changed now, he's still busy. But we have learned to communicate, and he has been better about saying, hey, honey, these next 2 weeks, I'm going to be busy, and I understand that. Like, I will literally write down the dates on my phone. Norby's traveling this day. Norby has a meeting this day, because I need to mentally prepare myself and the boys to say, daddy's going to be busy. So we need to respect that. Right. Because we have to understand, this is his job. This is what's going to feed us. This is what's going to get us our home. And we need to equally respect it. And it makes him feel valued. And that's my main goal, that you would know you are valued at home. And I'm sure that if you are looking into marriage podcasts or anything like that, practicals are communication, spending intentional time with each other without the kids. So AKA having fun. And serving one another, for sure. That is like the most important one.
But yeah, I hope you guys get some value out of this.
Yeah.
My wife and I have had these conversations plenty of times. We've spoke about these topics plenty of times. We've had to, and we've had a lot of honest conversations. We've had a lot of those conversations that even make you uncomfortable at times. Yeah. And so you need to have those real convos with your partner. That's when you start moving in the right direction together. That's when you start to have progress, when you guys can be real with each other, and it's not only her sacrificing on her end and saying, oh, I'm going to submit to my husband. It's both sides have to meet in the middle, and I have to consider, okay, my wife loves this, and let me try to meet some of her needs or her wants, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I'm not the best. I'm not. She's the best. She's amazing. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have an amazing wife like her. Like, she covers all the bases. But
it's literally just gone, you guys. That's it. There's nothing special. Again, I was raised by a single mom, and I was not taught what love looks like. It was just like whatever Hollywood showed me, right? He had to sweep me off my feet, and he had to buy me the flowers and buy me the chocolate and take me on dates and make me feel like I am the star and the queen of this world. But what about him? And I feel like, again, that's just a culture thing. And then marriage, OMG, that is not going to work. Good luck being the center of attention in your marriage. It's not going to work long. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Say bye, buddy.
Wrap it up. You can wrap it up.
All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching again. Hope you guys like this episode, and we can't wait to just continue to have conversations and share them with you guys. If you guys have questions, please comment down below, shoot us a DM, shoot us a message. You know, we've got a whole year ahead of us. Give us some topics to talk about. You know, we want to know what you guys have on your heart, what you guys are dealing with, and what you guys would like to hear from, you know, us touch on. So thank you again, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
That's right.
Cheers.